a Tuesday. It is championship rings. It is May 21st, 2024. Brandon Lewis, the host of Brand's World, Josh Ungar from the Ungar to the Max YouTube channel. And I have been dreading this show since Sunday at about 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Hey,
Go ahead.
buddy. So, who was right about the Indiana Pacers making it to the conference finals?
Well, let's see. Jalen Brunson gets hurt, and Alex Burke gets hurt, and Mitchell Robinson gets hurt, and Josh Hart gets hurt. You have the easiest road to the Eastern Conference Finals this side of the Boston Celtics. So, were you right, or was it the NBA gods saying, let Josh Ungar be the only person in the world to pick the Indiana Pacers?
Nope, I was right from the beginning.
Yeah.
I called it.
Yeah. You knew for sure the Knicks were going to lose 6 guys and be down to Dante DiVincenzo in the third quarter of a Game 7. You knew the Pacers were going to shoot 80% for the field. Yeah, you knew all that.
All right, let's just get right into it. Well, before we get to Pacers Knicks, let's get to...
This one ripped my heart out even more. Let me start. The Denver Nuggets are up 20 points at halftime of Game 7 after getting obliterated in Game 6 because I think they wanted to just end Minnesota on their home floor. They didn't really care about Game 6, which I thought was a horrible strategy. But I thought they're up 7. Nikola Jokic, or they're up 20, excuse me. Jamal Murray has 27. Nikola Jokic practically has a triple-double. Michael Porter's putting the ball for the basket a little bit. He had 7 points at the half. I thought, okay, Denver's at home in that altitude. Anthony Edwards only has 4 points. Minnesota looks completely out of it. I got this. And then what happened? Nobody on the Nuggets could make a shot to save their life. And then where? Aaron Gordon, goodbye. KCP, goodbye. Christian Braun, goodbye. Holiday, goodbye. Michael Porter didn't score a single point. Jamal Murray standing around looking at the basket. Nikola Jokic stopped being aggressive. It's like the Nuggets gave up. And they thought, we got this. And Minnesota slowly chipped away, including Rudy Gobert hitting a freaking fadeaway jump shot. Are you kidding me? Rudy Gobert, the man that can't jump, hitting a fadeaway jump shot. And then Karl Anthony Towns, who for 9 years in Minnesota for the number 1 pick, arguably has done nothing in his career, has maybe the best game of his career in the playoffs in a Game 7, and Anthony Edwards goes 6 for 18, and it doesn't matter, yet despite all that, this game was still a 5-point game with about 35 seconds to go, and Karl Anthony Towns makes a boneheaded decision to try to inbound the ball, and it goes off a Minnesota player, and it's Denver ball. And the Nuggets are down by 5. And they have one chance to make this a ball game. And they run some stupid play where Jokic is trying to do a handoff to Jamal Murray, who is not moving for some reason. Jamal Murray just fires up a shot, planks off the back iron. Ball game, series over. Biggest choke lead in the history of a Game 7 in the history of the NBA playoffs, because the Denver Nuggets, I don't know. The role players completely disappeared. They didn't have a bench. It was Jokic or bust. And the Minnesota Timberwolves, here they are. And in my opinion, now should be the favorite to win the West and probably win the finals.
I should have fully gone in on the bet that the Timberwolves were going to win this series rather than just...
Oh, that killed me. I thought I had you. I didn't really care about Game 6 because last week, if you remember, I said I thought Minnesota could win Game 6. So I was going to give Minnesota that. I said Denver in 7. And I thought they're up 20 at the half. Jamal Murray, who has an injury, I don't give a rip. I ain't giving nobody excuses.
Then you shouldn't give the Knicks the injury excuse either.
The Knicks had actually people injured, and they were down to 4 people. That's the difference. And half those guys weren't out there. Jamal Murray was out there. He never missed a game.
But look what happened. Minnesota was not afraid of going into Ball Arena. Still one of the stupidest names I've ever heard. And they won 3 games in Denver. These are the defending NBA champions we're talking about. I'll tell you what, though. Denver was not as deep this season as they were last season.
They missed Bruce Brown. That's the guy they missed.
And Jeff Green. Don't discredit what
to an extent, Jeff Green, but Green didn't get a ton of run last year in the playoffs. It was Bruce Brown who would be incredible defensively. Green had a game here or there, but he wasn't the ultimate difference maker.
He was still a key piece for them.
He was, but by the way, it wasn't even that. It was in game 6 and 7. Do you realize Michael Porter, who couldn't miss a shot against the Lakers, couldn't hit the side of a barn? KCP completely disappeared. Christian Braun gave you 5 points. Both of these series that we are going to talk about, and you can include Dallas in it, but the main 2 ones, Indiana and Minnesota, it came down to freaking role players on the road playing better than they did at home. When has that ever happened in the NBA?
I mean, to be fair, the Pacers are undefeated at home so far in these playoffs. So it's not like they haven't played well at home. But on the road, the Pacers, not so good. But Minnesota, on the flip side, they've only lost 1 game on the road. 1! Which was, I believe...
Game 5. Game 5 at Denver when Denver annihilated them. And I think Denver psychologically thought, okay, they're not going to come back and win 2 games. And that's what happened when you take your foot off the gas pedal. And for the Denver Nuggets, we both said going into this season, it's why we both at the beginning of the year said Denver will probably not make the Western Conference Finals because it's going to be hard to repeat. And then when you watch them during the regular season, you said they're not as good as last year. But when those guys like Porter and KCP and Aaron Gordon, who disappeared completely in this game, I don't even know if he was on the court at the time. I think he was throwing to invisible people. When those guys get going, Denver's unbeatable. And guess what? They were until they weren't. And again, all those guys disappeared. I thought Jokic had a decent game 7, not a great one. Again,
Jokic only sat down a single minute.
Yeah, but if you're the best player in the world, you got to get that game home. You got to get that game home up 20, and you're out regardless of what anybody else is doing. Your running mate disappeared in the second half after he had an incredible first half that made you think that, again, Minnesota is done. And then everybody on Denver, including their superstar, disappeared in the second half.
But you got to credit Minnesota's defense for that, because that's that's been one of the big things for them.
No, I will say they played good defense. But also, you know what made Denver so unbeatable last year that very few people picked up on till Game 7 of this series? What the hell happened to Jokic's 3-point shot?
I don't know. I'll tell you this, though. Michael Malone, what was he doing in his post-game press conference?
You know what? I don't care. Hey, you know what? Good for Michael Malone. And I'm a part of the media. Good for Michael Malone.
That was not a disrespectful question by the reporter, though.
Well, what do you want him to say? Oh, I'm very disappointed right now. You know, we'll go. No, it freaking sucks. We blew a 20-point lead at home. That's a natural reaction. Well, get the hell out of my face. What do you think, man? I just blew a 20-point game lead at home in Game 7 in the second half. Well, that was my reaction watching the game. I'm sitting there going, I got this. Next thing I know, I don't got this. And next thing I know, I really don't got this. And next thing I know, it's bye-bye Denver.
So, earlier this season, when we were doing the show, you said Denver is a dynasty in the making.
I thought they were. And then, like I said, every important thing, you look at the history of the NBA. You would get Kobe's Lakers, the Spurs and Duncan, LeBron's Heatles, the Golden State dynasty. The history of basketball tells you we have stars and we have role players that come alive in big moments. Guess what? Denver had box number 1 checked. Box number 2 disappeared from the wayside. Now, I don't think they're going to completely go away. I think they need to retool that bench, but I am for now putting the dynasty talk on hold. If they come back next year, I'm not saying it's dead. If they come back next year and they retool the bench, the West is going to be a gauntlet, especially if a certain star in Cleveland finds his way over to you know where. I mean, the West is a freaking gauntlet for 82 games, and whoever gets out of the West this time in Minnesota and Dallas, it's likely they're not getting out of it next year.
Yeah. So if Minnesota or Dallas wants to win the title, they got to do it this season.
And by the way, this is a stat that I did not know that when you think about it, you're like, wow, okay. The defending NBA champion the next year has not made the conference finals in the last 6 years.
Yeah.
The dynasty era of the NBA is over. We're going back to the 70s. Again, some people like it, some people don't. I think there's positives and negatives to both. The fact that the NBA ratings for the entire playoffs are down double digits from a year ago, I don't think is a great sign, but who maybe Anthony Edwards or Luka Doncic can be that guy that makes this NBA Finals entertaining. Because I'll tell you one thing, it's not going to be Jason Tatum.
We will get to the Boston Celtics, but before we get to the Pacers-Knicks series, I want to get to the other Western Conference playoff series that we had.
By the way, Oklahoma City was up, 17 or something like that? Going into halftime, game 6, and Luka and Kyrie just said no. And you know what? Really watching these playoff games this weekend, it makes you realize, why do we even spend the first half watching NBA basketball? The first half doesn't matter. You could be up 20, you could be up 25. If you're not, you might as well start each half 0-0, consistent across the board. Because the first 6 minutes of the third quarter, I could argue, is the most important aspect of any NBA game. Because if you're behind, that's your chance to get back into the game. If you're ahead by however many, that is your chance to either keep your lead or continue the distance. That really dictates the end of the game, how you start the second half.
Okay, so I know that in reality, the game in Dallas was game 6, but for me, that was a game 7. The way it ended up playing out, with Dallas coming back from 17 down, and then Oklahoma City responds by hitting a 3-pointer, I think it was, to retake the lead, and you had one of the craziest final 3 minutes I've ever seen.
And how big was Derek Lively? That was my knock on Dallas the whole series, was I didn't know if they had the size. Derek Lively was better than Chet Holmgren in this series as a rookie.
Yeah, and that's where Oklahoma City missed the mark with the trade deadline this season. They needed to add size to go alongside Chet Holmgren, because you saw Dallas started to take advantage of that. And if Oklahoma City had faced Minnesota in the conference finals, I think the Timberwolves would have done the same thing with the likes of Karl-Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, and Naz Reid.
And by the way, how about this play? What's fast forward now? There's about 20-ish or so seconds left in the game. Dallas at this point is down 1. Luka has the ball, and it sort of feels like he's dribbling the air out of the ball, wanting to take the last shot after Oklahoma City just had taken the lead. And Luka gets double teamed, and he kicks it out to the left corner to PJ Washington. And the number one golden rule in all of basketball, high school, college, AAU, NBA, don't close hard in the corner, because it's more than likely if you close very hard in the corner, you're going to commit a foul. And what does Shea Gilgeous-Alexander do? He runs, in my opinion, too hard at PJ Washington, trying to get all ball, and he clearly comes down, sweeps him on the wrist before the ball leaves his hand, and it is free throws for PJ Washington to essentially win the series for the Dallas Mavericks, a 60% free throw shooter. And I actually thought, and not a lot of people are talking about this, and I hate to say it for you Oklahoma City fans, but I thought the biggest mistake in that situation was to challenge that call.
Oh, I was gonna. If you weren't gonna say it, I was, because you, you knew once that foul was called, if he made the first two, he was gonna intentionally miss the third. So Oklahoma City would.
If Oklahoma City did not have a timeout, which they had until they had obviously committed.
Correct. And
So,
that's, as it played out, Oklahoma City did not have their timeout, so Washington intentionally missed the third, so that Oklahoma.
correct. By the way, he's only a 60% free throw shooter, so I'm betting he's at least going to make one free throw at that point if I'm Oklahoma City. My best case scenario outside of him missing all three is he's going to make one of three. It's going to be a tie game. We are going to head to potentially overtime. But I want that timeout in my back pocket with 2.5 seconds left in case whatever happens. He makes 1, 2, 3, whatever. That way I have a better chance of advancing the ball to half court and getting a shot off. Because even if he were to make all three free throws, Dallas is only up one at that point. With 2.5 seconds left, Oklahoma City could have called timeout, had the ball with 2.5 seconds left, and had one shot to win the game and go back to Oklahoma City for a game 7.
Yeah, and like I said, I know in reality it was a game 6, but for me, that game felt like a game 7. It really did. So in my mind, there were 3 game 7s this weekend. Not 2, but
Well, I know you want to brag about how you were right about the Indiana Pacers.
I called it from the start. Go
Yeah,
back.
like I said, you called it. So let me just map this out for how the Indiana Pacers got to the Eastern Conference Finals. Let's just start with round 1. Giannis Antetokounmpo gone for all 6 games of that series. Damian Lillard gone for 2 games of that series. Milwaukee ended up winning 1 thanks to Chris Middleton beating the Indiana Pacers by himself. Is that really a good playoff team? I don't think so. So then you get to this Knicks series. They are down 2-0 to the New York Knicks, and they are about to go down 3-0 in game 3 until Andrew Nembhard makes an incredible 35-foot shot at pretty much at the buzzer, something he's not very good at doing, by the way, to even that series at 2-1. Indiana then obviously comes back and win game 4. Knicks come back, they annihilate Indiana to win game 5. But I thought this series, and I thought the Knicks were doomed when in game 6, Josh Hart mysteriously takes an elbow essentially to the ribs of all what Jared Allen did. He suffers basically an abdominal tear. He's trying to play through it. The Knicks are all beat up because they've already lost Mitchell Robinson in this series. They lost all their size. Obviously, we know Julius Randle is not there. Jalen Brunson's beat up. And then we get to game 7, where who would have thought TJ McConnell, out of all people in the world, who averaged a career high this year, ladies and gentlemen, of 10 points per game. He scores 24 points in this game. What about, let's see here. What about Andrew Nembhard, who again, he averaged 9 points per game this season. He goes 8 for 10. He puts up 20 in a game 7. How about Neesmith? He goes 8 for 8 for 19 points in this game. He averaged 11 points per game this season. On top of all of that, the Indiana Pacers had to shoot 80% from the field. And it was still a 6-point game in the third quarter. And then Jalen Brunson breaks his hand. And at that point, the Knicks are down to Dante DiVincenzo and Alec Burks, who was benched for the first 8 games of this playoff by the Knicks. He's not a very good player, yet he had to put up almost 30 points to keep the Knicks in this ball game because they didn't have any people left. And there is a reason, Mr. Unger, why the Indiana Pacers, who ironically are the biggest underdog in the NBA Conference Finals, since they were an underdog 10 years ago to the LeBron Eagles Miami Heat. This reminds me a lot of the Atlanta Hawks team with Trae Young. They're not a real conference finals team. They're a playoff team, but they got the biggest breaks in the world, and they will not take 2 games off of the Boston Celtics in this series.
Oh,
this
yes,
series
they
will. Be a
will.
wipeout. I will bet you a bottle of my Dr. Pepper back that this series will be 5 or less right now.
Have you not seen how the Indiana Pacers have played at home so far in
Have
these
you not seen
playoffs?
the Indiana Pacers not play defense? They gave up an average. You talk about the regular season. Did you know this year against the Celtics, they gave up an average of 130? An average.
Okay, but Boston only won the regular season series by 1 game, 3-2.
Yeah. Well, again, who is the best three? Who is the best three players in the series? Boston. Who is the best 9 on, I would say, 12 players in the series? Boston. This is a complete and utter mismatch. Indiana will get 1 game because Boston will shoot piss poor. Indiana will shoot probably well at home, either in game 2 in the Garden or game 3 in Indiana, and the Celtics will dispose of them in 5 games.
Nope. Indiana's pushing this to at least 6.
No, they are not.
All right, let's just get right to the. We're not even going to talk about Cavs Celtics because that series ended a while ago, and who cares? Let's just get right to the conference finals.
The two most Mickey Mouse run teams I've ever seen get to a conference finals. Celtics, who needs Jimmy Butler for the Heat? We don't need to play you. Donovan Mitchell, he gets hurt seriously on time. Jared Allen doesn't even play in the series. What's your best bet? Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, or Tyrese Haliburton's going to get hurt in this series? I'd say it's pretty likely because the NBA gods want the Boston Celtics. This is the year. The NBA gods are telling you. They just eliminated Boston's biggest threat to win the title in Denver. They're saying, would there be Jason Tatum?
Oh, boy.
Well, they are. I mean, the NBA gods work like the NFL gods. The NFL gods said, would there be Patrick Mahomes' dynasty? Please, we need another dynasty. And the NBA gods are saying, we've harped on the Boston Celtics for so long. This is their year. Let's just let them cakewalk directly to the finals.
I mean, think about what the road the Celtics have gotten so far. They finish off the Miami Heat in 5 games. What happens? The first round series between the Magic and the Cavaliers goes the full 7 games. Round 2, they finish off the Cavaliers in 5 games. What happens on the other side? Knicks Pacers goes the full 7 games.
And again, that's what the Knicks missing about half their starters and half their people off the bench. And by the way, it took them 6 to beat a Giannis-less Bucks team.
What are the odds that if this series goes 5 or less, as you're predicting, that Timberwolves Mavericks goes the full 7?
It's pretty high. I think it will at least. I don't see a world where that series doesn't go 6. And that, that's a very interesting series to me. I think it really depends on, obviously, we'll talk about Luke and Tyree versus Ant and Cat, but will it depend on Rudy Gobert or Jaden McDaniels or Mike Conley or Derek Lively? Probably will, or PJ Washington. Well, it's going to come down to probably those players. But
yeah,
this to me is a joke. Again, the NBA gods, Boston Celtics, you won. Thank you very much. You are the easiest. People thought LeBron's road for 8 years of the NBA Finals was easy. LeBron had to go through some pretty good teams in that stretch. This is the Indiana Pacers, or I should not say that. The Boston Celtics, I should say, will not have to face. I know you disagree with me on this, but in my opinion, they will not face one superstar for the entire length of a series before they get to the finals.
Anthony Edwards, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, no?
No, I'm talking about to get to the finals. Tyrese Haliburton, not a superstar in my opinion. They only had to play Donovan Mitchell for 3 games. Didn't have to play anybody on Miami besides Bam Adebayo. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, Bam Adebayo is not a superstar. I agree with you there. Tyrese Haliburton can certainly become a superstar. I wouldn't say he's there yet.
By the way, I will give you credit to this. He did have a very good Game 7. That's the guy. I will give him credit. I will give Siakam credit. I will give Miles Turner credit. But I'm not giving the fact that TJ McConnell had to go 6 for 8. Nembhard had to go 8 for 8. Neesmith had to go 8 for 10. And Indiana literally could not miss. And it was a 6-point game in the third quarter until Jalen Brunson broke his hand.
By the way, Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals starts in about an hour and a half at 8 o'clock tonight.
And by the way, the spread on this game is 10. I know you probably want to take Indiana plus 10. I would for probably game 2. I think tonight is Boston Celtics wipeout. I think they win by at least 10 tonight.
Boston, I'm looking. The total is 222 and a half.
I would probably take the over, knowing the way those two teams play.
Boston, I'm looking at ESPN bet. Boston's a 9.5-point favorite.
Okay, well, FanDuel has 10, so pick your poison there. I'll
tell you this.
Celtics tonight.
Okay, I'll tell you this. The Celtics didn't really feel the effects of not having Kristaps Porzingis in the series against the Cavs because Jared Allen I don't know what was going on with that whole thing. I don't want to get into it. But when you have Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner coming at you, they could feel the effects of not having Kristaps Porzingis for...
That is the only chance Indiana has in this series. If their two bigs have to become monsters.
I'm saying it's more on Miles Turner, actually.
Well, it's Turner and Siakam, them both. They both have to do it.
Yes, but I'm saying it's more Miles Turner because he's going against Al Horford.
Who, by the way, as we saw in the Cleveland series, can't guard a pick and roll to save his life.
So, if I'm Indiana,
this series is going to come down to who can outshoot the other. I think Boston's a better defensive team. They will lock in when they have to. I think Jaylen Brown will have a big game tonight, not necessarily Tatum. I think it'll be a lot like the Cavs series where Brown has a big game 1. You'll probably see Tatum have a big game in the Indiana Fieldhouse at some point in this series. But I think Derek White has a good night tonight. Peyton Pritchard has a good night tonight. Celtics roll.
Peyton Pritchard versus TJ McConnell is going to be such a fun matchup.
TJ McConnell, he averages 10 points a game. Yeah, he's been in the league for years, averages 10 points a game. And then against the Knicks in a game 7, that's the best game of his life. What's he going to do tonight? Is he going to follow that up with another 20-point game? I highly doubt it.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I wish it was Mike
Breen. I think this series is going to be a snooze fest.
No way.
I think this thing will be over by halftime tonight.
No. Indiana's going to keep it close, but I got Boston winning tonight. I have Boston ultimately winning this series, but I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk for them.
Oh, come on. Put it up. Come on. You're Pacers, right? You believe in your Pacers so much. Well, why are you picking to win the series?
I still have the Celtics. They have to bet. Tatum and Brown are, I would say, are the two best players in this series.
Easily. And by the way, I would say Drew Holiday's probably third.
Oh, I don't know about that when you have Siakam in there.
Well, when Siakam's hot, and by the way, sir, you think Siakam's better than Elburn. That's basically what you just said.
Actually, I would go Brown number 1. I would put him over Jason Tatum.
Wait a minute. You finally agree with me on that.
Jaylen Brown's been the better player for the Celtics.
I've been saying that for 6 years, but I don't know what I'm talking about.
I mean, Jaylen Brown was the better player in the 2022 NBA Finals against Golden State between him and Tatum. And you even said it yourself. Who was the main guy in the Cleveland series? It was Jaylen Brown.
Well, I would make an argument that game 1, it was him. I thought game 3 and 4, it was a tag team of Tatum and Brown. I did give Tatum a little bit of credit for that series. I thought he played well. But, I mean, the Cavs' defense is better than Indiana's.
Yeah.
By a mile.
Because Rick Carlisle, all he said was, our defense just has to be average. At best.
Well, and that's because they're hoping that all of their guys can make shots, but all of their guys are not. Why I keep saying the numbers tell you that if the Knicks were healthy, that series would have been Knicks in 6. That's what the numbers told you.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to admit that Indiana did catch a break against the Knicks.
So you just said they caught a break, but then you said you called it. You can't have both sides.
Yes, I can. I absolutely can.
You called it, but then you go, oh, yeah, by the way, my Pacers got a break, or I would have been wrong. What kind of argument's that?
You can't take away the fact that I called it from the beginning.
You Yeah, but then you just said they got a break, so you're disqualifying your own call out.
I am not. Okay, every team, you have to admit this. Every team catches a break or two.
Oh, every team has some sort of luck. I'm just saying the Pacers and Celtics, look at the road the T-Wolves had to go through in the West and Dallas as opposed to the Celtics in Indiana. It's a joke.
So there you go. The Celtics also had breaks.
Well, yeah, but they're about to get an even bigger break because the Knicks would have at least given them a battle defensively. I mean, well, maybe not now because Jalen Brunson's hurt. The Celtics probably should have rooted for the Knicks, and that would have been a sweep without Jalen Brunson. But, I mean, come on.
But let's flip over to the Western Conference because this series is going to be fun.
I think Minnesota. It's telling me that they're the better team. But
I'm also going with Minnesota.
But in the back of my head, Anthony Edwards is only 22 years old. As much as people want to compare him to Michael Jordan, LeBron James, etc., we all know at this point in his career, at this age, the only person to ever do what Anthony Edwards has ever done is LeBron James. And I had our good friend of the show, Jalen Sandvik, on the podcast today, and we had this discussion. If Minnesota wins the championship at this point in his career, you may have to say that no one has ever done what Anthony Edwards has ever done, and he could be considered better than what LeBron James did at this point in his career.
Wow.
Because the president tells you Minnesota should not be getting to the finals. They are the better team, but history will tell you Luka Doncic is his time. This is Dallas' time.
Dallas-Boston would be a really interesting NBA Finals if that's what we get. I'll tell you that, because Luka and Kyrie going against Tatum and Brown, that would be must-see TV.
I think it would be a good series. My problem is, which is why I think I'd rather see Minnesota. Luka, I can't get invested in Luka yet. I need to see him do it on a bigger stage. I need to see him be the leader. I need to see him stop bitching to the officials. I think he's done a better job this playoffs, but is he ready to be that guy to carry the team on the stage in the moment? I'm still not sure about that because I think Kyrie had a hell of a hand in what Dallas was able to do to Oklahoma City.
And to be fair, Oklahoma City is still a very young team. So,
by the way, that I think is probably a good bet to make the finals next year. If I had to make a pick right now, I think Oklahoma City probably gets a year older, probably adds another piece. They feel like what Minnesota is right now, a year from now.
You look at what the Timberwolves were last year. Think about it. Kyle Anderson and Rudy Gobert got into a full-blown fist fight. I think it was McDaniels had a fight against a wall, and, well, McDaniels lost. And did they trade Kyle Anderson? No. Did they trade Rudy Gobert? No. And here they are in the Western Conference Finals.
Rudy Gobert's, I know he won playoff series, but in retrospect, he's never had a successful playoff career, and yet here he is basically outplaying Nikola Jokic in a game 7.
Yes.
I can't fathom what I've watched over the last 2 days.
I will tell you this. Where Dallas might have the advantage is the fact that they have Kyrie Irving. Because Kyrie, he went to the finals twice with LeBron.
He did. My worry about that, and I know obviously Luka and Kyrie and Dallas have played better defense, but Minnesota can throw at you Mike Conley. As you know with Denver, right? They can throw at you Mike Conley. They can throw at you Jaden Daniels. They can throw these different bodies at the guards, which Dallas cannot do. And I don't know if Dallas has a guy that can stop Anthony Edwards. Like, I think Michael Porter, to an extent, and the guys that Denver had could play some defense. This, to me, feels like a Anthony Edwards series for him to take over.
Did you hear that Anthony Edwards said, I want Kyrie Irving? Did you hear about that?
Yes, I did.
What are your thoughts on that? Because I think that's a dangerous game to be playing.
Well, Anthony Edwards is a young kid. He's got some Michael Jordan in him, as we see with the way he talks. Um, Again, I will go back to it. The Minnesota Timberwolves did not win Game 7 because of Anthony Edwards. They won Game 7 because of Carl Anthony Towns, Mike Conley, and Jane Daniels. If you really look at Anthony Edwards, he did his best with his assists, but he had 4 points in the first half. He finished 6 of 18 from the field. That's not going to get it done more than likely as we get to the bigger stages. And so for me, Anthony Edwards, he's done a lot of trash talking, which is fine as long as you back it up.
Yes. So there's a my friend Chris and I. You remember Chris? He was on the show. He was on the show with us to preview WrestleMania. He and I have been debating this for a while now because he says that the only way we can get a new NBA champion is if Indiana or Minnesota win the title. Whereas I'm saying I know that Dallas won the title in 2011 and the Celtics have won multiple championships with their last one being in 2008, but they would still be considered new champions because they didn't win it last year. I want to know your perspective.
So I think you guys are both right because I think it really depends on how you interpret the question. Because does new mean a franchise that has never won a championship before, or does new mean you didn't win the championship last year or in the last few years or in the new iteration? I think both can be right. Um, I think that from a story perspective, the best possible outcome would be for Minnesota to win the title. I think from a second best story perspective, it would be Dallas and Luka Doncic finally getting over the hump. And I think that the NBA, though, in my opinion, really wants the Boston Celtics because we know how bad ESPN specifically wanted the Knicks Celtics Eastern Conference Finals. We know there's going to be a heavy emphasis on the Boston Celtics are the biggest market by far. Dallas isn't, a small market by any means, but they're not Boston. And I am so sick and tired of listening to the Celtics have won 6 Eastern Conference Finals in the last 8 years. Is this their year? Like, it's either their year or they're not. I started off the show by screaming to the heavens. The NBA gods say, let there be Jason Tatum. Let there be Jalen Brown. There's no Nuggets. There's no Warriors. There's no historic president. This is your year. But to answer the question, I think I have to side with you, Josh. And the reason I'm saying that is because we've never seen this version of Dallas in the finals. And we've never seen this version of Boston win the championship. So, in that perspective, it would be fresh. And we'll have to see how NBA fans respond to it. But it is somewhat fresh.
Yeah. Um, I do get Chris's argument that like the only way to be considered a new champion is if you haven't won it before, which over in the Stanley Cup, the only way that could happen now is if the Florida Panthers ultimately win the Stanley Cup because the New York Rangers have won it before, the Edmonton Oilers have won the cup, and the Dallas Stars have also won the cup. Um, which, by the way, that's going to be interesting because Dallas is in the Western Conference Finals for both the NBA and the NHL.
And by the way, it all depends on eras. And I think a perfect example of this was Golden State, when they won the title, obviously back to back against the Cavs, then they also won the title again in 2022. That to me wasn't considered a new champion because that era, the Curry, Draymond, Clay era, that was just extending the dynasty one more year. As I said, this version, the Tatum Brown version, they made one NBA Finals. They got disposed by Curry, Clay, and Draymond and the gang out there in the Bay Area. That would be a new champion, in my opinion. And obviously, Dallas never making it on the stage would be a new champion.